Are you thinking about moving to the Oregon coast? Maybe you've had your sights set on Florence. Florence is a really popular destination on the central Oregon coast for people to relocate to. And in this video, we're going to look at Florence on a map. From north to south, we're going to look at the different neighborhoods, the different areas. Florence has kind of a sneaky amount of diverse landscapes and areas that people can live, from beachfront to in-town to lakefront as well. We're going to talk about all of that. Now, if this is your first time to the channel or you've been here and you haven't already and you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button, tap that little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. And if you are thinking about moving to the Oregon coast and have questions, if you want to talk more about Florence or other areas that are similar, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, click that link down below in the description of the video, schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we'd love to help with your move to the Oregon coast. Without further ado, Florence, Oregon. All right, let's talk about Florence, Oregon. So Florence, Oregon is a coastal community in Lane County on the central Oregon coast. So you can see it's really kind of right in the middle, going from north to south of the Oregon coast, due west of Eugene. This is really about an hour drive. Could be a little over an hour, could be a little less than an hour, depending on where in Eugene you are coming from. But this drive out from Eugene on 126, pretty straightforward, a little windy in here, but you're not climbing as much elevation as you are on some of these other highways running from Western Oregon to the coast. Florence, very popular destination for people relocating to the Oregon coast, in particular folks who are nearing retirement or have retired. The median age is somewhere around 62, 63 in Florence, so it's going to be a little bit more of a laid-back community. The population is going to be a little bit older. Definitely a lot of folks we've worked with have kind of skewed a little bit toward that median age for folks who we've helped relocate to Florence and to the Florence area. So in this video, we're going to talk about Florence, Oregon. We're going to look at this map here and kind of go from north to south, looking at some of the different areas within the overall Florence area, some of the differences, some of the pros and cons, benefits, and maybe downsides to living in some of these different regions around Florence. So zooming back out a little bit, you can see the city limits for Florence don't totally cover the entire Florence area. So you have here up to the north of Florence, you have Heceta Beach. We'll talk more about that. Very, very desirable area. You have areas that are lakefront out here on the north side, like Mercer Lake. Of course, you have the city limits in town right here. And then south of town, you have Glenada, and then Siltcoos Lake and Wohink Lake down in Dunes City. So if you're in Heceta Beach, if you're in Dune City, this Glenada area just south of town, you're going to have a Florence address. You're going to be in unincorporated Lane County. So that really doesn't change much necessarily. There's going to be different water districts. Some areas are only going to be patrolled by the county sheriff, versus like the Florence Police Department, for example. So there's going to be some subtle differences living in unincorporated Lane County, having a Florence address versus actually being within Florence proper and within the Florence city limits, but nothing really noteworthy necessarily, or nothing totally of consequence, as far as affecting costs or your day-to-day. All right, I'm probably going to be becoming a little bit clearer now. I made an adjustment to my microphone, so hope the first 3 minutes there came through clear enough that you could understand me. So without further ado, let's look at Florence. So we've talked about just some of the differences north to south, and being in Lane County versus being in the city. Again, not going to make an enormous difference day to day, whether you are outside of city limits or in, maybe going to be some tax differences. I know that in this area around Heceta Beach, I know that the city is trying to annex this area, and there is some pushback So, not going to dig in too much to, some of the local politics on that. But from what I understand, again, there's not going to be anything major as far as considerations on where to buy. I think it's really going to come down to what type of area suits your needs best if you're moving to Florence. And that's part of what we're going to talk about in this video, is some of these different areas, some of the differences, and what it's going to be like. Now, you may like Florence, you may not want to live right in town, where you can see it's more dense, it's busier, there's more tourists, all that good stuff. You might want to be near the beach. Well, the best area to live in Florence is going to be up here around Heceta Beach. It's really going to be the only area in town with beach access. You might want to be lakefront. That is one of the things that draws a lot of people to the Florence area. Well, you're going to be outside of the city limits. That's Munsell Lake. Up here around maybe Mercer Lake, you can see that the shoreline is really just lined with homes. Really cool lake. Or down in Dune City at Wohank or Silk Goose Lake. So you can see a little denser in here. A lot of lake access and everything too. So if you're here in Dune City, the beach access isn't as great. You can get to the beaches over here. I mean, you got the dunes pretty much everywhere in town that you can get to. You're going to be a little bit out of town, but you're going to be, again, outside of those city limits. So let's hop back up north and talk about some of these different areas. So Florence overall really offers a very diverse set of landscapes and types of areas that you could live. In town, Florence is going to have basically everything you need. Florence is a town of over 10,000 people, so it's about the same size as Newport and Lincoln City to the north. One of the larger towns on the Oregon coast. It doesn't feel as busy. It doesn't feel as dense. It doesn't feel as populated as those towns to the north. So, with a larger population comes typically more public services, more amenities, more tax revenue. So, the city's going to be able to do more things. Again, more public services, libraries, things like that. But, you got the grocery stores, you got the restaurants, you got everything you need, in particular in this downtown area. But don't let me get too far off on a tangent here. Let's start up here around Heceta Beach. So if you're coming on 101 South into Florence, so you have this Heceta Head here. So you climb some elevation, if you go back north, and this is a really kind of rural stretch from Yachats to Florence. So there's some cool beaches in here, really no towns or residential development. Again, you have this Heceta Head here. If you're coming south, you come down the hill and you get into Heceta Beach, this area first. So you see there's really kind of one way in on this Heceta Beach road. And there are a handful of developments in here. Probably the largest one is Heceta South, which is most of these streets in here. There's, 150 homes, something like that, maybe more, potentially, throughout this area. So you have not quite gated community, but this is an HOA community. This is an area that's, definitely really popular. Nice big homes, relatively affordable when you look at proximity to the ocean and, all the other kind of amenities that you get compared to other areas up and down the Oregon coast. You get some really big lots in here. You see all of the vegetation. So there are some rules around taking down vegetation, where a lot of these lots might be a quarter acre to a third acre in here, but there are some rules around keeping the vegetation up, probably mostly for privacy. So, you kind of maintain the local ecosystem and everything there too, but you also retain a lot of privacy, where a lot of your lot isn't necessarily usable, but you have privacy if you're on if you're in any one of these yards, rather, you can't really see all of these other houses around you. So it's really cool. A little bit closer to the beach. This is more kind of typical beachfront Oregon coast, little cottages and things like that. Smaller lots, kind of the quaint, quirky Oregon coast, beach homes, cottages that you can find in a lot of different towns. It's a little more consistent with what you can find down here right next to the beach. And then you have this Driftwood Shores, which is a condotel. So, you can do nightly rentals. It really operates like a hotel, but the units are individually owned. We've helped a couple people buy units in there. Pretty cool investment opportunity. So that's really what you're going to get by and large in Heceta Beach. Again, this is going to be primarily, really your only area to live if you're in Florence that's going to have this type of beach access. And you get a pretty nice long stretch of beach here. So it's gorgeous, just like a lot of beaches on the Central Oregon coast. You are a little bit more removed, so you definitely get tourists in here, but it's not right on Highway 101, right? So a lot of places up and down the Oregon coast, people drive out for the day. A lot of people do the weekend or a few nights, but a lot of people drive out for the day, right? So you're definitely going to get some people from Eugene, but you're not going to get like the day use crowd coming from Portland, all the way to Florence just to go to Heceta Beach. So again, it will get crowded, it will get busy, but not as much as some other beaches on the Oregon coast, definitely. So if we're staying on this north side of town, again, outside of city limits, we get over here to some of these lakes on the north side of town. So there is Sutton Lake, and you get some residential development in here. So you can get some lakefront opportunities up around Sutton Lake, and then Mercer Lake. A lot of second homes. I don't know how many people live in here full-time as a primary residence. Definitely a lot of second homes, people that live like in Eugene or even the Portland or Salem area. Great little lake. And you have some other lakes down here too, like Clear Lake, and then Munsell Lake. Just a little bit of development, but not nearly as much when you look at the shoreline as Mercer or Sutton on the north side. So an abundance of lakefront living in Florence, more than probably any area on the Oregon coast outside of Devil's Lake in Lincoln City. But on this north side of town, definitely some opportunity for that. So if we're getting back into town, there's going to be definitely some differences living on the east side versus the west side of the highway here. But I think for people who would be looking to live in more of a dense area, not as remote or removed, maybe you want an area that's a little more bustling. You can kind of find that anywhere in town. This is primarily where you're going to get most of the full-time residents. This is going to be probably where more of the younger crowd lives, younger families, things like that. It's going to be in town. And you can see this west side of 101 in town, a little bit more of a diverse offering. When you kind of look at this corridor, in particular this rhododendron corridor, this is Rhododendron Drive that goes along the Siuslaw River. Rhododendron will take you all the way up into Heceta Beach and connect you down into town. So it's kind of it's a little nicer drive, detour, backdoor, whatever you want to call it, compared to just going up and down 101 in town. So we'll talk about that. And then on the east side of the highway, you do get some gated communities out here, some golf communities, like this Ocean Dunes golf course area out here. And there are some other gated communities that really live largely like a 55 plus community, that aren't necessarily 55 plus, but, do have some of the same characteristics. And then, you can see it's more dense residential on this east side. So, and this is pretty flat. So that's another big difference with Florence in town compared to a lot of other Oregon coast towns. A lot of other Oregon coast towns have a lot of elevation, kind of rolling hills or more of a dramatic elevation climb right in town, which makes for some ocean views, or just, forest views, coastal range views, which are really desirable. Obviously, you don't get nearly as much of that, really at all, actually, in Florence. So this is all pretty flat in here. So on the east side of town, along the highway, you can see it's basically laid out like on a grid. So this is going to feel more just kind of like your run-of-the-mill suburban area in here from, right around where Old Town is, I guess, just a little bit north of Highway 26. So about 10th, 11th, 12th Street, up maybe 30, 40 blocks, and then it gets a little more dynamic up in this area, this Florentine Estates. Again, this is one of those areas that kind of lives a little more like a 55 plus community. So on the west side of the highway, again, you have this rhododendron corridor going along the river, and driving along rhododendron, you can get some of these river views. You can see over to this dune over here. It's really beautiful. Really kind of a landscape that's unique to Florence. You do get areas like this, towns that are on a river going out to the ocean, but you can see how long the river stretches in town, and you have this dune here that really separates town from the beach. So again, if you're in town, you're kind of on this riverfront community more so than beachfront. It's not until you get up to Heceta Beach, like we talked about, where you get, this community is more of a beachfront community with direct beach access. So the golf course is on the west side of the highway here, west side of 101. You get some really cool communities in here, up and down Rhododendron, kind of making your way up to Heceta Beach. So some really cool options for living kind of along the river, up and down Rhododendron here. You do have some manufactured home parks in this area too, so you can get some cool landscape for some pretty affordable prices. So I think there's at least one park where you lease the land, but there are some manufactured homes in here too, where it's manufactured on real property, so it's zoned for manufactured, but you actually own the lot, just like you own the home. You have the hospital and the airport over here. I don't know much about this airport. There's not really commercial flights or anything like that. Maybe private jets, maybe, cargo, things like that. And then the hospital is over here as well on Rhododendron. So some luxury upscale living in here, some gated communities, really nice areas along Rhododendron. Again, you're in town basically, but you don't feel like you're in town, and you can get down Rhododendron to get right down into Old Town, Florence, which is what we'll talk about next here. In town, kind of near Old Town, you have this neighborhood, which is a little bit older. You get some older homes, cottages, bungalows, things like that, smaller lots, more dense, kind of a mixed bag as far as what you get around here, but some really cool opportunities. You do see there's some riverfront down here as well. And then Old Town, there are some homes in town here, but you can see it's just a couple of blocks. This little downtown area, though, I mean, one of the coolest downtowns on all of the Oregon coast, and in my opinion, flies under the radar a little bit. Let's see if we can get a street view. So if we kind of start here under the bridge, great little coffee shop there, River Roasters, and you can see a lot of restaurants up and down the street. It's just a couple blocks. This Bay Street is really kind of Main Street. You can see a lot of great little local restaurants, little shops, boutiques. I think there's a kite store. I think there's like a water sports store, antiques, art galleries. You got Jambo, the smoke shop, if that's your thing. Whatever, kind of something for everyone down here. Really cool little downtown area in Old Town Florence. And again, you're right on the river, so there's a little boardwalk down here as well. Really cool area to come hang out. So if we zoom back out a little bit, continuing south in Florence, you have this Glenada area, which I haven't actually personally spent too much time in. You have great access to the dunes. You have some camping, and you do have some ocean beach access, which isn't far from town either. I mean, from here to get here out this road to the beach, I mean, you're looking at maybe the better part of 10 minutes, something like that. So it's all pretty quick, pretty good, easy access. And you can see there is quite a bit of residential development in here. This isn't quite Dunes City. Again, it's an area called Glenada, which is a Florence address, but just south of town, outside of the city limits. And I've looked at some houses in this area. Definitely a cool area that I think would check a lot of boxes for a lot of people in terms of what they're looking for. Quiet, peaceful, laid back. You're in the trees, you're in the woods. You have access to the dunes. You can get to the river, get to the ocean, and get up into town very easily. So this is an area, that could definitely be worth looking at if you are thinking about moving to Florence. If we can get a street view, we can, you can see it's just a little more, it's definitely developed, but you don't have your sidewalks and things like that. You can get some nice big lots, big properties like that. This looks a lot like Dunes City, which we'll look at here in a moment. As far as, just the landscape being more in the trees. I would say too, on the Oregon coast, there's not that many areas that are this densely wooded. So if this is kind of a landscape and aesthetic that is appealing to you, definitely an area worth considering. And the climate's going to change too. So, you can see how close you are to the ocean, but if you're on the beach here, it might be 10 degrees cooler and a lot windier than if you were over here on the east side of the highway. And that's going to be similar for Dunes City as well. So you can see in Dunes City, you have a lot of development around Wohink Lake over here on this east bank in particular, and then this little kind of land bridge that separates Wohink Lake and Silk Goose Lake. A lot of residential development here. We've sold a ton of houses in this area. Really cool spot, very desirable, especially for people who like the water sports, whether it's kayaking, paddleboarding, boating, whatever it may be. A lot of people really like this area. And again, you're going to get a little bit of a different climate. I mean, you get the precipitation, you get the coastal storms, just because you're right there on the ocean for the most part, but you have these dunes that are separating you from the ocean. And so again, you're going to get a little bit of a different climate over here in Dunes City. Now, if you're in Dunes City, you got to get over to Darlings for sure. So if we ever go out looking at houses in Dunes City here, we got to go to Darlings Marina. Some of the best barbecue you can get on the Oregon coast. Right in here. Awesome spot. Great spot to spend an afternoon, have some lunch, check out Silk Goose Lake, go check out some houses, something we do routinely when we're taking folks out in Dune City specifically. So then if you're looking south of Dune City, there's about a 40 minute stretch. Well, probably more like 30 minutes. From Florence to Reedsport, it's going to be like 45 minutes. But once you're in Dune City, you can see you're already a little bit south of town. So maybe 30 minutes from Dune City down into Reedsport. You can see Reedsport's actually kind of a similar dynamic where you have the Umpqua River coming out, and you're actually right on the river. It's not until you get out to Winchester Bay until you actually get to the ocean. So similar to Florence, a little bit of a different feel, but it's your closest community to the south, Reedsport, and then you're into Lakeside, you're into Coos Bay, and then all of a sudden you're on the southern Oregon coast. So Florence is going to be just about as far south as you get on the central Oregon coast. You can see it's a little bit isolated, with Reedsport being about 45 minutes south and Yachats is about 45 minutes to the north. So you are really close to Eugene. Florence is about as close to Western Oregon or to a more populated area than any other town on the Oregon coast, similar to Newport and Corvallis, like you can see here. So I know a lot of people that live in Florence do like to get out to Eugene, whether it's just for shopping, check out some different restaurants. If you like the Oregon Ducks, if you like college athletics, that's obviously big in Eugene, big college town, and medical services, whatever it may be, Eugene is very quick and easy. You also have the airport in Eugene, so it's going to be somewhere in here on the east side of town. You're only about 50 minutes from Florence to the airport. So if you need to fly a lot, Eugene is a good regional airport that'll get you to a lot of different areas regionally on the western, kind of southwestern West Coast. I think there are some flights to Dallas actually from Eugene. So even if you're flying to the Midwest or East Coast, you can do connecting flights coming out of Eugene. So that is Florence in a nutshell. You have Heceta Beach and the beachfront communities to the north, as well as some lakefront on the north side of town, Mercer Lake, Sutton Lake. You have this corridor through rhododendron here, where you're in town, but you don't really feel like you're in town. You have some wooded areas, some gated communities. You're by the golf course. You're by the hospital. So some cool opportunities there. You have some gated communities on the east side, as well as just kind of a standard suburban feeling community here in town. You have Old Town and some older neighborhoods, older development. On the south side of town, you have down into unincorporated Lane County, Glenada, access to the dunes, more wooded, more remote feeling at least, but still close to town, all the way down into Dune City, Wohink Lake, Siltcoos Lake, very popular areas for people to relocate to. And if you are thinking about relocating to the Oregon coast, if Florence is an area that you are interested in, if you want to learn more about Florence or areas that are similar to it, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. And on that call, we can talk about your budget, your timeline, your needs, your wants, areas that are going to suit you best, and really put together a game plan for you. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. As always, we really appreciate you watching. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.